morning, everybody. Usay hamu ya ini ofuatsawa ang kujoa kawe My name is Kaylee Warren. I'm from the Pueblos of Santa Clara and Isleta. I'm a student at the University of New Mexico, and I'm one of the founding members of the Dine Pueblo Youth Solidarity Coalition. Yate She'e Cheyenne Antonio Ichia Hatson Shle Kachi Bashichin Shishidashacheo Kiani Dashanella Katego Dinin Sun Shle. I am from Pueblo Pintado, New Mexico, and I am not a student. I'm working right now, organizing a part of the Chaco Community Alliance, as well as the Dine Pueblo Solidarity Group, and do a lot of awareness on through the Fracking page, and as well as the Red Nation. And I should also mention that I am a member of the Pueblo Council of Governors Natural Resources Committee and the Greater Chaco Landscape Subcommittee. But the disclaimer, the presentation that I'm making today is on behalf of the Dine Pueblo Youth Solidarity Coalition and not on behalf of the governors or their council. So this is our opinions. We'll just establish that first off. So thank you for coming this morning. We're going to present about fracking in the Greater Chaco landscape and the implications that has for health of the people in those areas, as well as the cultural impact that it has on indigenous people throughout the Southwest. The way I got involved was about maybe like 4 years ago. My grandma is an Alati. We got a letter, and that's where it all started. And from there, I got involved with our chapter houses. I do a lot of youth work with them, as well as presentations about fracking and just getting to know, what happens, just the whole oil boom that we're facing right now. So through it, it's not just me. There's Kendra Pinto, she's from Twin Pines, Daniel So, as well as Samuel Sage, and our chapter communities who have all supported our efforts in calling a moratorium and an environmental impact statement, and as well as conducting a health assessment for our Eastern Navajo communities. And through this, we definitely, it's very hard because we're dealing with money, and usually when people are getting money, it's very silent in our communities and no one wants to talk about it. And however, we do see the social impacts, we do see what's going on in regards to like the truck traffic, as well as the pollution, the methane in the air, and the constant construction going on in our communities. And so it's very hard, and as well as having to establish solidarity that mostly our elders, specifically men, don't want this to happen. And so that's how Kaylee, Marissa, and I, and as well as Jen in the back, we've all come together and started to talk more about this and how our Dine family members, the communities can work in solidarity with our Pueblo relatives and going back into our trade systems and stories, because we're so far from the Navajo Nation itself. And that's another thing I want to point out is that when I say Navajo territory, I mean separate from the Navajo Nation, because we don't see their efforts in helping us as a community, making sure that we have air monitoring systems to make sure that our water is constantly being tested. And so with all of the defunding going on with the Trump administration right now, all of those budgets are cut, right? So how are we supposed to measure the pollution in our air, water, and land? And how is Navajo Nation going to support us when they can't support themselves? And so just want to clarify that. Can we go for it? So this is the format we're going to be talking about: our tri-chapter community efforts, our work with the all Indian Pueblo governors, and then the violence against our land and bodies. So the Mako Shell is a target for all of the oil and gas companies right now, as well as the Bakken up in North Dakota and the Mancula Shell up in Pennsylvania. So all of these communities who sit on shell beds, they're all being targeted by oil and gas, specifically within this area. Okay, can you go for it, Brandon? And along within our territories, we have Zisnaaldisi, which is where first men and first women decorated rugs, ties, and cloth for Stanadahi, changing woman. So a lot of our songs, a lot of our prayers, this is specifically Dinetka, where our clans were formed, where all of our cultural stories come from. It's all within this area. And then, so this is a picture of one of the greater sites in the Chaco Canyon National Park. But for the Pueblos, it's the entire landscape that is sacred. It's similar to how the Dine see it. It's not localized to just one spot, and this is consistent throughout indigenous peoples. Is that there's not just one central location that you can put a circle around that defines what a sacred site is. Every sacred site has outlying sites. Every sacred site is more than just one central location. And for the Pueblos, we acknowledge these spaces and the greater Chaco landscape as part of our origin, where we came from as a people. And we can tie the sites within it, like Chaco Canyon, like Mesa Verde for my own people, like Chimney Rock, going on and on through the thousands and thousands of sites within the area, to places where we stopped during our migration to where we're currently settled today. So for Chaco Canyon specifically, it is sacred to all of the Pueblos and to the Dine, and not just us, it's sacred to Hopi, it's important to people in Mexico. It's a site that connected indigenous people in history who came from different places throughout this continent. So it's more than just a place, it's more than a ruin. And it's not a ruin, that's actually an incorrect label of it, because these sites are not dead. And that's very important to understand, especially because of what's perpetuated by archaeologists and anthropologists, is that these sites are not dormant, they were not abandoned, they're still in use, and they still sustain us, just like they did 100 to 200 years ago. Nothing has changed. They're just as important. Also, just to put it out there, when one of the hard struggles that we come to, that constantly comes at us, is working with nonprofits who hire on white anthropologists to tell us what is our history, what is our lands, and we dismiss that right away. Like, get out of here! You don't tell us what is sacred. You don't tell us where we come from, because we know that, we know those stories, we know where those plants are. And I would just like to put that out there, because we have definitely been challenged with that in regards to, Dine people can't work with Pueblos because they have their anthropologists telling us what our history is, and then the same for Pueblo people telling, they have Dine people there. And so it's just like, no, get out of here. This is totally something that's never been done before, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason why our tribes have always been, because of colonization, because of all of this, going back to settler colonialism and how all of these systems have turned us against each other, and how it continues to do that, and we need to combat that and be like, no, we got to do this out of care, we got to do this out of kinship and coming together and working in solidarity with each other. So we're going to get into a little bit of what's been happening with the Pueblos. So the All Pueblo Council of Governors is the collaborative body that brings together the 19 Pueblo governors of New Mexico, and there's one Pueblo governor from Texas. So it's where they all come together to discuss and to make decisions on behalf of the Pueblos as a people. It is important to mention that each of the Pueblos is its own sovereign nation, and each of them has their own government. But the All Pueblo Council of Governors is where they all come together to make decisions on behalf of all of us as a people. So in February 2017, the Santa Clara Pueblo Youth Council, which is a youth council that I helped found, as well as one of the other members of the Dine Pueblo Youth Solidarity Coalition, we created it in 2013. And we came before our governors in February 2017 to talk to them about our concern for the sacred sites within. Oh, and important to mention is that this particular meeting where this was said was historic because it was a gathering of both the Navajo Nation, Vice President and President, and all of the governors of the Pueblos. So this meeting was held as a special session on Chaco Canyon to discuss what was happening and what had already happened, because one of the catalysts for this gathering was there was a huge leasing sale. And also something that had also happened recently was Standing Rock and the resistance in that. And it was something that I think caused a lot of reflection throughout Indigenous people as to what are we doing? Because this is not a situation that's localized to Standing Rock. This is something that happens all over, but what are we doing about it? So when we saw that, we decided that we should go talk to our governors about it, because that's what we're taught to do in the Pueblos, is that we have the opportunity, if we have a problem, to go to our governors as our family, as our fathers, and tell them, I'm concerned about this. And so that's what we did. So our youth council put together a message, and this is an excerpt from that message. It says, the threat of losing these vital cultural resources, talking about Chaco Canyon, has caused us to reflect on the importance of one of our most central values as Pueblo people. In the Tewa villages, we are told, since time immemorial, Pueblo people have all been raised with a similar value, raised to be brave and compassionate. As young Pueblo leaders who genuinely believe in the principle of loving and caring for one another, our resources, and our Mother Earth, we feel compelled to act in this issue. We stand not only for the preservation of our sacred sites, but also in solidarity with our Dine brothers and sisters whose physical and spiritual well-being is threatened by further desecration of our shared natural and cultural resources in the greater Chaco landscape. So I'm going to bring it back to that phrase. In the Tewa language, in my language, that means love one another always and take care of one another. So it's something that you're raised with. And most of the time it's something to settle things down after you punch your brother in the face. But it's something that transcends through everything else. It's what informs how we're supposed to interact with one another and our land. We're supposed to take care of one another and what we walk on. And we're supposed to be loving. And so we have to act in that mannerism always, especially when we're taking care of our sacred sites. And this is what we brought to our governors and told them that we were concerned about. And the result of this meeting was the creation of the Greater Chaco Landscape Subcommittee, which is a branch of the Natural Resources Committee within the All Pueblo Council of Governors, which is at this moment dealing specifically with protection of the Greater Chaco landscape from fracking and extractive industries. So that came from a youth request and really shows the power of youth engagement and the youth voice. Okay, on back to Navajo. Sorry, that is all true though, what Kaylee said. I'm very, very fortunate to know Kaylee and Marissa, who are all very fierce Pueblo women, and Jen for always being open to having, resist for our sacred site and our knowledge. And so What is very complex about what is happening in Eastern Navajo territory is we're on checkerboard land, which means BLM, the state, and as well as Alatis own different parts of land. And so when, let's say, there's an explosion that happens, which has happened, and I'm actually going to show a video of that, who is the first responder? And also, if you go out towards Crown Point, it's completely like there's no one out there. If you go towards Chaco, like there's no gas stations, there's no hospitals. We're very excluded. We're very far away. Jurisdiction plays a huge part in how do we not only get resources, but who do we hold accountable? It's a systemic issue, right? Because this is what this is the aftermath of the General Allotment Act. And this is what happens. This is intentionally done by the U.S. government and targeting Native bodies. And also from the state of New Mexico and targeting Navajo communities first and foremost. Because for one, when there's an explosion that happens, there's no one there on site. It takes about at least an hour. And then if there is a crime in Pueblo Youth, who's going to be there first? Whose land is it on? Can you get signal out there to even call police? You know, even if there's an explosion, who is on site? And so it's very hard to hold people accountable, even within the Navajo Nation, and having evacuation plans. Where do we get those evacuation plans? How, so it's very frustrating, and it's difficult to hold people accountable, especially when leasing continues without our consent.